Okay, I see that we have gone live, and I want to welcome you today. I'm Janie Lantz, and I am an independent educator with Husqvarna Viking and Pfaff. And I am here today to do a Facebook Live session for you guys called ABC 123. And we're going to kind of cover some of the basics and things of how the mySewnet embroidery software works. Get you guys, especially at the beginner level, some new information, some tips, some hints. We'll take questions and answer as many of them as we can. So once again, my name is Janie Lantz, and I am an independent educator. I've worked with embroidery software since the DOS days for our brands, and just really enjoy sharing this with all of you. In the background, we have Amy, and she is our technician who runs everything. And I'm getting a little reminder from Amy. Look at my camera instead of at my screen. So in the background is Amy, and she is our technician. She's going to be taking care of everything in the background and putting your questions up so that I can answer them for you today. I do want to remind you this is being recorded. So it will be available as soon as we're done with the presentation, and it will go up on both Facebook and YouTube. So that will be available as soon as we're done today. If you have questions, please put them in the chats. And I do want to remind you that sometimes others sneak into our Facebook presentations, and we don't want you to click on any links other than something that might come from mySewnet itself, so that you don't stray away into something you shouldn't be in. Okay, so I want to cover just a few basic things here, and I've made myself some notes, but if we get some questions, we'll address those as we go along too. Amy, we're ready, I think, to go over to the software screen. Thank you. And I have pulled up the mySewnet embroidery software window, and you can see this is the welcome splash page, and this is what it opens up to initially when you open your software. So several things that often people have heard misinformation about are mySewnet embroidery will work on either Windows or a Mac computer. So the Mac system is just a bit different in a few places. There's a component or two that it doesn't have yet at this point, but it will do 99% of everything that you can do on the Windows side. And as we go through the presentation today, I'll try and point out things, how they're a little bit different on Mac, because I know we have a lot of Mac users out there. If you have questions, don't hesitate to ask them. If we can't answer them right here today in the live, we sure will follow up on the Facebook page and post answers for you there as much as we can. So we can use it on both Windows and Mac PCs. PC just means personal computer, by the way. It does not require a dongle. Instead, you use a code, a license code, and you activate it online, whether you subscribe or whether you buy a box. And every software license code allows you to install it 2 times. So I've told people many, many times, if you have a Windows computer and a Mac, you can put 1 copy on each one. And I do that. I run some things on Windows, some things on Mac. It's handy for me because I teach, but there are some things that are actually more user-friendly on a Mac computer if you have both. You can put 2 copies on 2 Windows computers, 2 copies on 2 Macs. So you have 2 license codes. Once you have activated a computer, to move it to a different computer, you have to go into configure and deactivate that particular computer to put it on another one. So just little tips and hints for things that might be useful to you. Then I kind of want to tell you about what the different packages are. So I happen to have this handy dandy little thing because I have a dealer copy of the software called Demo Mode. And in Demo Mode, I can show you that we actually have 4 different levels of the software. And a lot of times people say, well, there is no free version of the software. Actually, there is. It's called mySewnet Basic. So I've opened it up here, and it should pop into your screen in just a minute. It takes it just a bit to load. And in this basic software, I'm going to use the go back button to go back to my main screen. And you can see basic is just that. It has very few tabs. It has a home tab. You can bring designs in, you can insert them, you can open them, you can change their colors, you can rotate them, you can put several designs together to create something. You can change different settings in the view, but it's not going to give you a lot of advanced designing capability. So I'm going to shut that one down. I'm going to go back here to my demo mode and show you how the silver subscription, which is the first tier of subscription or boxed software. And in silver, when I click the go back button, you'll see that silver actually gives you the opportunity, besides all the tools you can use on the home tab, to encore designs, to create lettering, and all three paid levels of the software have the same fonts in them. So the fonts aren't tiered anymore. All the fonts are available in silver, gold, or platinum. It also gives you super designs and frames. So with that silver software, you can do a lot of designing. You can't do any digitizing or cross stitch or anything like that, but you can do a lot of designing. So it's a great software package. So I'm going to close that window and go back here and open the gold just to show you what gold adds. And I'll go back here and show you that in gold, we now have additional tools. So we have a create tab. We can do express designs. We can do photo stitches. We can do the word sculpt and the quilt block. And we're going to talk about some of these, and I'll show you some tips and techniques in some of these as we go through. But notice that digitizing is grayed out. Cross stitcher is grayed out because in gold, you can't use those more advanced pieces of the software. They're not available to you. They're not part of the gold package. But you can create your own designs, just basic, simple ones using Create and the Express design. So I'm going to close that one down. And that's going to bring me back to my software window for Platinum, which is what I'll be using today. But as we go through, if you get confused about whether a feature I'm talking about is in silver, gold, or platinum, just post a question and we'll answer those questions as well as we can as we go along today. So I'm going to kind of go back here in my file menu because this is the first screen you see when you open your software. And in this software, you'll notice there's a list under Welcome. New Window is a function that you can open an entirely new separate embroidery window. So it's a little bit different in Mac and Windows versions, but New Window in Windows, I can have this design open and I can open a second window and work on another design. So it's multiple sessions, if you will, multiple program windows. You can also open or insert embroideries. Open lets you find an embroidery file somewhere stored on your computer. And I'm going to kind of show you that real quick. I'm in the samples folder right now that's downloadable from the website. But with Open, when I click and select a design and it opens it, it actually opens the original sample file, and the name of that file will appear at the top of the program window. And once I do that, if I save or save as after I've made changes, it will overwrite my original sample and essentially I lose it. I've changed it. It's a totally different design. So Open also will only let you open one design to one program window. So if I use Open and open the bells, and then I use Open and open a biplane, I will have two program windows open with one design in each. So Open has a very different function than what Insert does. Now, Insert lets me select files and anything that's connected to my computer, so I can insert from a USB stick or a drive or anything I can get to through my computer. With this one, I can select multiple designs. I'm holding my control key here, and I can open one or more designs, and I can insert one or more designs, and I can insert additional designs as I go. So insert is the tool that I find myself using the most often when I want to bring embroideries in. The other thing that insert does is it brings them in as copies of the original. And at the top of my program window screen, once I get them in the work area, they're going to be untitled. So if I save or save as and don't change a file name, it won't overwrite my originals and make me lose them. So very, very important thing to know. Now, save and save as, the difference is save, the first time you click save, you put in a file name. Save as, it always asks you if you want to use the same file name or type in a new one. Export, and after we do one of the designs, I'll cover how each one of these works for those of you who are really new to the software. But export is what finalizes your design files so that you can take them to your sewing and embroidery machine and stitch them out. Save and save as create a working file. So we'll talk about that a little bit more too as we go through and start doing some designing. The send function is how you can get it to the cloud or to an Wi-Fi enabled sewing and embroidery machine. And then there's some other settings as well here. There's a shortcut to the configure software. Configure is where you can set up your personal preferences and also reset if some of the links in your software get broken. So then the other thing you see on this intro page, so to speak, if you have recent projects that you have done and you close your software and open it again, they'll appear here in a list. You can also use blank canvas, or you can link in the gold and the platinum to other parts of the software, and it will take you directly to the place where you can, say, create a digitizing design or a cross-stitch design or a sketch design. So all of those things are here in that welcome page. And I'm going to start out by creating myself a blank canvas. And when, oops, I had something going there, so it wanted me to save it as file name. When you do use blank canvas, it comes up and gives you the opportunity right there to change the hoop. You could also, I'm just going to show you this quickly here. You could have used this go back button that says file when you cursor over it. And when you click that go back button, you could then go to the hoop settings and change your hoops from there as well. So neither way is right or wrong. It just depends on how you like to do it. A lot of times, if I use go back, I know I've already got the hoop size set what I want it to be, and it opened from the size I used the last time. If I use blank canvas, it's because I want to specify what hoop and what orientation I'm using. And if I use new window, maybe I've designed something in my embroidery window and I don't want to mess with it, but I want an additional piece. So I would go to the new window to design it there. So those are the three options when we're getting started that you might want to choose from. So I'm going to go back to this blank canvas and I'm going to set up my hoop size. Hoop group is where you can pick a brand and a machine, and you can see all the Husqvarna Viking and Pfaff machines, and the Singer machines are listed there. It also has many other popular brands. I'm not going to list them all. You guys can see them, but they're all there in that list and available. When I do classes, I use Universal. Okay, I have a question up here. How do you get the pictures of your designs in your files? Okay, hang on to that one for just a second and we'll address that. So Universal, I use Universal because oftentimes when we do these presentations, we have people that have our software, but they have other brands of machines, and they can go to that Universal hoop and they can just pick a hoop size, or they can go to their own machines and pick hoop sizes for their machines. So for today, I am going to just pick a hoop size that I can do some demoing in. So I'm going to pick a pretty large one. And since I'm going to start with lettering, I think I'll use the 360 by 260 large hoop. Now in the hoop selection window, we also have the orientation of natural and rotated. And it used to say vertical and horizontal. At some point along the way, natural is the way the hoops clip on the machine because they clip at the side, right? So natural is the hoop in its orientation like it would clip on the machine, and rotated is rotated if it's a rectangular hoop so that you could design horizontally in it. So I am going to use those to rotate to a horizontal hoop. And then if you have certain hoops that you really love and you use them and you want a short list, and I'll show you what that short list is, it's called My Hoops. So when there are certain hoops that you use all the time, you can put included in My Hoops. And then when you browse in the hoop group list and go to My Hoops, those hoops that you own or that you use often pop right up for you. So that's kind of a cool feature as well. Okay, so we're at a 360 by 260 universal hoop, rotated. Another thing I want to mention here in passing is the orientation set, or is the inner size setting. And on this inner size setting, when you work with, say, something you want to put over a shirt pocket, and you want it to be a very specific size, you can enter hoop size and you can put height and width, or width and height, in isolate a hoop size so that you don't create your embroidery too large. But once you check enter hoop size, if you go back to change a hoop again and you find this all grayed out, and this happens all the time, that's why I'm mentioning it, you uncheck enter hoop size to be able to go back and select from the hoop groups and hoop sizes. So just a little heads up, if you ever see that you can't get in here and change these, and I see it posted in Facebook groups and stuff all the time, it's just because you have a check mark here and you can uncheck it, and that'll save you a call to software support. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and we're going to look at some lettering. However, I have a question. How do I get the pictures of your designs in your files? I am guessing that what you're referring to is if I go to my quick access toolbar in Windows and insert, you want to know how I get pictures here instead of words. And that is under this menu setting option. And I have mine set either on extra large icons, or I have it set on large icons, or medium icons, or small icons. So if you use the icons, it puts that little thumbnail picture in there for you. Now, if you have your view, your menu view set on using icons, you probably want to give software support a call and they can help you get that set up, because there's a few settings in the Windows file preferences that may be not quite set the way you need them to be. And there's also a couple of other things that can block it from showing them as pictures. So, feel free, if you are not seeing those pictures and you are using the icon views, to give software support a call. Now, having mentioned that, I'm going to flip over here for a minute and go to, sorry guys, go to the mySewnet Embroidery Software homepage. And I'm in mySewnetembroidery.com, and then I logged into my dashboard, and that's where I can see where to download the mySewnet embroidery software. So we get questions on this too a lot. I know our software support people get lots of questions on this. So on this page, you have tabs, you have buttons, and one of them is for Windows and one of them is for Mac. And each one of those has different installations. So if you're downloading for a Mac computer on your Mac, you want to browse to this window and click the For Mac button. Also, I want to point out to you that there is a release note file And that will tell you what was added at each update to the software. So the release notes are a good way to find out if you get a new version of the software. It said there was an update, you downloaded and installed it. Release notes will tell you what was in that new update. There are also a lot of really great guides here. There are quick start guides. Those help you with the basics of maneuvering and manipulating the software. And I always tell users, come take a few classes and then open up these guides. They're PDF. You can put them on a reader. You can print them off. You can just open them on your computer and look at them, or you can print the pages and lay them out beside you. But the quick start guides are basics. And then there's help and guides, and those are more advanced user manuals. And there's also an inspiration and education tab there that you can go to. Now, I did tell you a minute ago that you can also go to software support. So if you go to support and it takes you over, there is a place here where I got to scroll down someplace. I found there is an 800 number for support, and I would have to scroll around the page and find it. But, oh, here it is. In Contact Us, here is your 800 toll-free technical support number, or you can email them. So all of that information is available to you guys, and it's all on the mySewnet page. And it's easy to access if you go to the dashboard and sign in to your personal account. Okay, I have a couple of other comments or questions. Okay, yeah, Amy made the comment that make sure you have downloaded and installed the File Explorer as well, because that is part of the downloads for the software. If you don't have the File Explorer plugin, it's a piece that you have to install separately from the main part of the software. Then you won't see thumbnails in that Windows Explorer preview window either. And is it possible to use software with a cutting machine for applique? And oh boy, do I have an answer for you. Yes, absolutely it is. I do it all the time. And actually I have a Memento sitting here in my studio, but it will work with pretty much all the electronic cutters out there. So we'll make an applique and we'll kind of try and cover some of that stuff. And we're just going to go as far today as we can get to. And then maybe going forward, we can expand and do some more pieces, parts for you. Okay, so I'm going to work with letters first. And I'm going to go to the letter tab. And in Mac, if you're a Mac user, Mac has a control panel over here on the right-hand side. And instead of having the tabs up here, the tabs are all on the control panel. So the same things are there. Sometimes they look a little different or they're in a little bit different place. And in this letter tab, we have this really cool thing called a font gallery. And the font gallery, you can scroll through one font at a time, or you can open this big arrow here and see the gallery viewer. And in the gallery viewer, we have a whole bunch of fonts. There's more than 245 fonts in our system, and you get those in silver, gold, or platinum. And in these fonts, some of them are applique, some of them they're themed, some of them, these are children's fonts. There are fonts for monograms, there are traditional fonts, lots and lots of different kinds of things. So I'm going to just pick this little font called Cats to play with for a little bit. And when you start to make a font, a letter set, we have a whole bunch of shapes. We call these line types or shapes or envelope shapes. They've been called different things over the years. You have straight line, horizontal, and vertical. You have a circle over, circle under, circle clockwise, lots and lots of shapes. I'm going to type in here, whoops, back here. I've got that window open and it doesn't like it. I'm just going to use that shape for now. I'm going to type in here, kitty, just for fun. And then I'm going to go over to an envelope type that is called a flag. Let's see if I can find it in my list. That one's the zigzag. And I think I have an ultra high resolution computer, and sometimes I can't make it pop up the settings as quick as I want to. I'll just use double arch. I was going to use flag, but we'll use double arch. And then I'm not changing anything else. So I've typed in my letters. You'll notice the letters have a name. They have codes. So UC means uppercase. There's if it's both upper and lowercase, there won't be any identifier there. Some of them have a monogram code, and all those codes are listed in the help system. Then there's a size range as well. So you don't really want to make your letters smaller or larger than that size range unless you're willing to start tinkering with density settings and spacing within the lines. And if we have time, I'll cover a little bit of that as well. So I know when I type in my letters, this UC is telling me that the words are going to be made uppercase, and I'm not going to have any control over, you know, I can type upper and lowercase. I'm going to get uppercase because that's all the letters come in. So I've typed in, and I know it's going to be an uppercase font. Size defaults to the smallest size always, but letters are a working piece of the software. So I can make them bigger or smaller as many times as I choose, and the stitch quality is always going to remain the same. So I'm just going to make them at 35 millimeters and then manually adjust the size to what I want them to be. You have a choice here whether you want to color sort or not. Most of the time I like to color sort things. The only time I would really uncheck a set of letters or a word or a phrase, uncheck the color sort if I wanted to make each letter a different color or a different shade or something. So you do have that choice there. You also have some choices under stitch type. So my kitty font, my cat's font, has double stitches and triple stitches in them, and I could change probably stitch length on those. That would be the only setting I can change. But other letters may have pattern fills in them. They may have satin stitches in them, so you can change all kinds of things with them. Spacing is for when you use multiple lines. So we're just doing one line here. I'm going to go ahead and click apply, and it's going to bring my Here Kitty in, and it made my Here Kitty in one line, and it made it to that shape. I've decided I would like Here Kitty to be two separate lines. So I have right-clicked with my design selected, and you know it's selected because it's got that little select box and it's got the green handles on it. And the green handles in our software always mean that this is a working object or a working element within the file. It's not been finalized for stitching. Once something is finalized, it gets white corner handles, and then we would have to turn on resize and sort of make a guesstimate of it bigger or smaller. It would not be precise like adjusting the size on something with green handles. So I'm going to go into my pop-up menu and choose Edit Lettering. And I can actually adjust my text that I typed in and make it 2 lines. And I could even change to some of the other shapes. So I'm just going to make this one a horizontal block. And oops, I didn't get that changed. Change shape, horizontal block. Huh. Well, I think I just found a little glitch in the software. So anyway, you can see with these different shapes, you can adjust the handles and stretch them around. You can rotate them. Maybe I have done something I don't like. I have multiple levels of undo and redo. And I also have a cool menu up here that I'm going to show you in just a little bit, which is called the handles menu. So I'm going to look at a couple of questions here. Pardon me while I look over to my other screen. The difference between when you use a Mac and a PC is in the PC, you have ribbon bar tabs like Microsoft Office or Windows uses. In Mac, Your control panel has the little individual tabs that correspond to what's in the ribbon bar on the Windows side. And Mac instructions, if you download those PDF guides that I showed you online, for the Mac, the instructions are written showing the Mac windows and showing you the Mac commands. So that's really great for helping yourself learn where things are in a Mac, especially if you go to classes and the teacher teaches mostly in Windows, which does happen sometimes. So I've got my little kitty cat here. I'm going to talk about handles in just a minute. So I'm just going to kind of park him off the side here because I have another shape that I want to show you, and it's one that I really like. It's called Free Sculpt. So I'm going to make another set of letters. I'm going to delete here kitty, and I'm going to type in hello. And I'm using this time from my gallery viewer for the letters, one from the script set. Now, the script fonts were specifically designed to connect to each other, and they've been around in our embroidery software system for a long time. They do have some limitations. So the script fonts, because they do connect, these three shapes, envelope shapes, the circle over or circle clockwise, circle under or circle counterclockwise, and full circle do not work well with script fonts. They'll break, the spacing won't look good, you'll have little connector pieces in there showing. So just make a little note to yourself. If you're going to play with script fonts, don't use the circle type shapes. But the script fonts work well with most all the other shapes. I'm going to come down here and use this one, which is Free Sculpt. And when this was added to our software, I thought, oh, this is so cool. So I'm going to apply it, and I'm going to hold Control and Shift on my keyboard, or on Mac it would be Command and Shift, and that's going to allow me to proportionally adjust the size on everything. And because my handles, my control handles here are green, I know this is a working element. And this is another little tip for you guys. Over and over and over again, I hear people saying, well, then I close my letters, or I go to the home tab and I say combine, and I combine my letters. And my question is always, why are you doing that? Because we used to have to do that. We had to combine the letters to be able to export it. We don't have to do that anymore, because when we're working with letters, we save our design with Save or Save As a working file. And that lets me come back in here tomorrow or next week or next year, open this design back up as the working file, right click on it and go to Edit Lettering or Handles or the Satin column and rework things over and over again. So that's an exciting tool in our software. And combining or closing the letters really defeats the purpose of having that functionality in the software. So I like to save this, and then when I get ready to export this to Stitch at the end, it's going to do all the combining and everything for me. So if you've been doing that, you don't have to do that. You can save it as a working file and then export it for your embroidery or sewing machine, and that will do all the combining and finalizing for you. Okay, so I've done a free sculpt. I'm going to get rid of this Hello Kitty. So I'm going to come up here to my menu and delete, or on my keyboard, I could just touch the delete key on the keyboard and get rid of it. And this is really, really fun to do because every one of these handles lets you adjust the shaping. So you can make some really cool shapes. Whoops. My little mouse wants to creep around and go places I don't want it to. But even more exciting, we have a handles menu. And in this handles menu, we have a lot more choices for things we can do with shaping our letters. So maybe you just made a straight horizontal line and you would like to have the top of this be an arch. So I'm going to select arch. These up here set the top of your envelope shape. And notice how that just adjusted itself into an arch. So I'm going to kind of bring this one back down where it was before so you can get a better idea of what it will look like. Then if I go back to the handles menu again, I can tell it a bottom line type. So maybe I want my bottom line to be a double diamond. So I need a bigger hoop for this size design. Now this brings up another little tip. Do you notice that my design is hanging outside the grid, and the grid is the work area of the software? So once it goes outside that grid, my handles, my little squares, turn to circles. And if you see circles on any embroidery design, whether it's a working element or it is a design that you have just purchased somewhere and brought into the software to play with, when it's outside the hoop, they're round. So if you see an element within your work area and those handles go around, that means you're outside the hoop and it will not export for you and you won't be able to stitch it. Oh my goodness, I got lots of questions here. So one of the questions is it best to stay in the parameters of the millimeters suggested for each font? And the answer for that is, generally speaking, yes, it is. So this font had a size range of 30 to 80 millimeters. And if I tried to make this much, much larger, I might start seeing gapping in the letters or the stitch quality decline a little bit. But you can always right click on that and go to the Edit Lettering tab. And from there, whoops, no, I did that wrong. You can right click on it and go to the stitch setting for this letter. And you can adjust density higher or lower. And you can also add additional underlay. So one of the things I found is if I do like a quilt block, and I stitch out a label for it. And that label, I try to use a little satin stitch letter, and the letters are clumpy. So when they stitch, it looks really rough and it looks clumpy. Some people go buy a whole set of extra threads in a finer size, like a 60 weight thread instead of the regular 40 weight embroidery threads. I have a tendency to come to density and make it less dense. And the density setting throughout our software is the same. If a density of 4 is 4 spaces, whatever that spacing is, it's not millimeters, it's a kind of a random spacing. If you take it to a 5, it's going to become less dense. If you take it down to a 3, it's going to become more dense. So if you use a very small satin stitch letters, I'm going to cancel this out and actually show you since this question came up. So I'm going to type in hello in a line and click apply. And this one is a script font, right? But if I tried to make this really teeny tiny, a couple of things are going to happen. It's not going to read very well. So when you stitch it out, those letters are going to look all squished together. And if you do multiple lines, those lines are probably going to overlap each other. So that's where you can go into, the satin column settings and you can adjust the density. Or you can go into the edit lettering settings and you can adjust the gap. So gap is, it's kind of a percentage. I'm going to start it at 10%. And when I click it, I want you to watch how these letters spread out and get further apart. And I probably need to do more than 10%. Let's try 25. And you'll see with each one of those changes in gap, those letters get further and further apart. So that gives you more readability. So yes, you can adjust letters outside the side range, but you're going to have to adjust them if you make them a lot larger or smaller. Does the software export into the Memento software? It only exports applique pieces because Memento software uses graphic images to convert to a cut file, and that's a whole other process. But if I make an applique, and I will do that before we leave today. I will make you an applique and show you that process of how we can export the applique pieces and then take them over to the Memento, because that's really easy to do once you know how to do it. So I'm going to go up here and go to File. And I don't want to keep what I've made so far. I'm just playing and showing you guys some things. So I'm going to go back to a blank canvas. No, I don't want to save those designs. I'll leave it 360 by 260 and say OK, because there's another feature with lettering that I think is very cool. So I'm going to go, and I've made some little notes here, the monogram category. So the categories are alphabetical, or as my nephew always said, alphabetical. And in the categories, I'm going to choose the Olympia 2-color font. Do you see how that says Olympia 2C, UC? 2C is 2-color and UC is uppercase. And I think somebody asked that question in here about why when I typed something in upper and lowercase, it only made uppercase letters, because no matter how I type it, if it's an uppercase only font, all the letters will be placed as uppercase. So I'm going to type autumn, but this is a UC font. I could have typed it all lowercase or all uppercase. It's all going to come in as uppercase once I make these letters. And then I'll just leave it the default size and a straight line and click apply. And you can see, whoops, and I missed a step. I'm trying to cram too much information here for you guys and I get in a hurry. So I forgot, I wanted to show you individual, and I think individual is very cool. So I'm going to make them in a straight line and click apply. And they come in, there are individual letters. You can see that in the film strip. You can see it's made a temporary group here. Groups are orange handles. Groups have dashed lines around the outside. You can treat them all as a group, but if I click outside of it, the grouping goes away. If I click, if I click and select them all again, then I have my group back again, and I can actually even in the Home tab make a formal grouping out of this, so the dashed lines turn to solid lines, and now it becomes a group in the film strip. And then I can reveal the individual letters down here at the bottom of the film strip with reveal groups. Okay, so I got a couple more questions and I will answer them here in just a second. So each one of these letters can be selected and adjusted. You can select all the letters and you can, I am going to move this letter in over, and then I'm going to select all the letters in that group, and I'm going to go to alignment and go to horizontal alignment and tell it to distribute horizontally, and it will respace them so that there's more space, but they're all evenly spaced from each other. Now, maybe I've played with these letters and I moved my U up out of alignment. I can go back and select them, and I can use alignment and vertical alignment and align them to the middle. And once again, it's going to place them all beautifully for me. I love this though, because when they're selected as a group, I can hold Control and Shift and I can adjust their size. And because each individual letter has its own select box, it is an individual letter. We chose individual in our settings on lettering. I can then select any one letter. I can make it larger, I can make it smaller, I can rotate it, I can do all kinds of fun things. But one of the things I do love about individual is if I take that same word that I just typed and I tell it I want to use a heart shape and click apply, instead of making the whole word into that heart shape that I did earlier, each individual letter gets the shaping of the heart. So you can do some really fun stuff with this. Okay, let me take a couple more questions here. Is there any limitation resizing existing internal mySewnet design? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that question, but if you're using resize, if you insert an embroidery that is finalized, it's been exported, or it's been combined and it has white corner handles, you should only resize it once. So it's not so much a limitation on how much you resize it as how many times you resize it. Every time you resize a design, it loses a little bit of quality. And if you resize a resize, there's a movie years ago with a comedian where he cloned himself and the clone cloned itself and the clone of a clone cloned itself. And by the time they got down to number 7, he wasn't very bright anymore. Well, that happens with our embroidery designs too. So if you bring in a design and select resize, which is in the home tab and it's right there, and it has blue corner handles on the select box, when you have a finalized or set design and you turn resize on, resize it once. If it's not what you want it to be, immediately undo and then resize it again. And then the next question is there a difference between the subscription version versus the box version? So the biggest difference that I'm aware of, and Amy, correct me if I'm missing something here, is that the box version will not get upgrades. It is what it is. It will get updates to repair things that don't work, or if it adds a functionality that is needed by one of our new top-of-the-line machines. But if they add new super designs, you're not going to get those because that would be considered an upgrade. Okay, so I promised you that I would show you an applique, and we'll do that with super designs. So I'm going to go to File and New Window and leave my autumn letters open. And we'll make a blank canvas, and we'll make the canvas this time square. So I like that 260 by 260 hoop. Orientation, if it's a square hoop, I usually choose natural because my clip would be on the left side of the hoop. And that means when I put it on the machine, it's going to look like I designed it. It's same orientation as what I designed it. And in Super Designs, I am going to go to the Super Design tab. You can isolate different super designs, or you can look at them all at once. Within Super Designs, I have all selected right now. You have a gallery viewer again. You can enlarge that so you can see more of them at a time. And you can scroll down through them. And I'm going to isolate these. I'm going to click that menu closed and isolate them to the appliques. And let's use let's use the dolphin. I didn't really pick that very scientifically, but you get the idea. So super designs are like letters. They have green corner handles, and that means when you have a green corner handle, you can adjust it, right? So you can drag the corner handle, or you can hold Control and Shift and adjust it proportionately from the center. You can rotate, and if you just rotate as is, it's pinned in the center by this little green circle with a crosshair on it. But if you want to rotate something to a very specific angle, I want to keep his flipper right there and rotate him, you can pin that angle of rotation so that you can swing him around wherever that pin is, and you can move it wherever you want it to be within the design and then do your rotation. Now, he is an applique design. I didn't preset anything, although they come in different styles. You can make them with a satin border, with motif border 1 or motif border 2. And interestingly enough, the motif border ones, once you have a motif border, you can then select from any of the hundreds of different motif stitches that are in the software. So literally, you could make the whale yes, he's a whale, one of the motif borders, and you could use a little fish for the border. So you can do some really neat, fun stuff. If I had you here for about 2 weeks, I could teach you everything I know, maybe closer to a month. Anyway, we're going to take this little guy, because we would preset those and then make our little whale, and we can also adjust stitch type. So that's where I could adjust what applique fabrics were used, the motif line. But once I've applied him, I can do the same things. So I can right click over him, and I can go to my applique fabrics, and I can change those. I guess it won't let me drag that over out of the way. Oops. Sorry, guys. It won't let me drag that menu out of the way. So I can change these. Now, sometimes when people go to change these applique fabrics, they're like, well, how do I know which one is applique fabric 1 and applique fabric 2? And a good tip off is to come over here and look at your thread color changes. The first applique that stitches is the green, so I'm going to guess that's applique fabric 1. The second one that stitches is the blue, going to guess that's applique fabric 2. And the black is simply the embroidery stitches for the eyes. So let's go to applique fabric, go to applique fabric 1, and then we're going to pick a fabric from a stash. There are some built-in fabrics, but there's also a tool for adding new backgrounds. And if you haven't ever done that and don't know how to do it, you can either go into the help system and look up applique, and that will give you some little mini tutorials. You might look up applique backgrounds. You might have to kind of search around a little bit, but there are little mini tutorials. And those PDF manuals that you can download also cover how to work with creating your own applique backgrounds. I'm going to use one of the preset fabric options. And in the preset fabric options, I am going to pick, let's do dots for fun. And also, this is where you can set up, if you are planning to use this as a cutter, you can set up how much larger or smaller you cut your fabric than what the initial design is. So this one, whatever size that fabric is, if I want to cut it a few tenths of a millimeter larger or a millimeter or two larger so that it extends farther out into the edges of the satin stitches, I can do that right here. So this one has about 4 millimeter satin stitches. You can go up to half of that distance larger on the fabric cut, and it will actually cut the fabric with a little bit more tooth to the edge so that you can catch it better. It's going to be just a little bit bigger all the way around. So now when I click OK, see how I can fussy cut, or I can preview my fabric. Now you can also right click over this and you can go to the satin column. Satin column 1 is going to be the green and satin column 2 is going to be the blue. So I'm going to look at my satin column 1. Satin column is satin column. All I can do on that is adjust density and add or take away underlay stitches. And for the most part, if I use an underlay on a satin column, I'm going to go with the zigzag, because edge walk is running line, and on satin columns, sometimes on sharp curves, they peak out. So not necessarily the best choice for a satin column. Then I have this embroidery design. I always want to make sure I save or save as. So I would have done this for any design that I wanted to keep, but I'm going to choose Save As, and I'm going to put this in, I'll just put it loose in My Designs, and we'll call it Whale Applique, and click Save. Now, I want to fussy cut the pieces out of this applique. And because it is a system applique, I have the option, and by a system applique, let me explain what that means. A system applique means that within our system, the fabric is there as a preview, and placing that fabric as a preview within the system lets us die cut the fabrics on a cutter or print a template so that we could cut it by hand. So we're going to go to File, and we're going to export applique pieces. So someone here asked me the question about exporting applique. This is the process you use to get it to your memento, if that's what you have. So once I go export applique pieces, I choose the format that I need to work with. And for the memento, the crafting software, it uses SVG. So our file format choice here would be to export to SVG, and I'll tell it export, and I'll put it right back here in the My Design so I know where it is. And it's going to call it Whale applique, but it will be SVG files. And those files you can open up in crafting, and in the crafting software, you convert them to a memento cutting file. So it's pretty straightforward. I've done quite a lot of that. I don't have one right here. I did a memento banner with lettering that was an applique lettering, and made the applique pieces on the memento and then stitched them on my embroidery machine. It came out really cool. And I'm sorry, I didn't bring it over here to my work area, so I don't have it right handy to show you, but it does work quite well. Bringing in purchased fonts is a whole technique on its own. I will try and give you some answers on the Facebook page later in answer to that question. But there's also a tutorial in those PDF guides on how to add fonts, and you do that in Font Manager. So I'll show you where that is in just a second. So I'm just going to save these. And if I go back out here and I go to the My Designs, what you'll see is that I have two SVG files for the two applique pieces, and those are what I would import into the Memento crafting software and go through the steps of turning them into a cut line. And they would just be a very clean line outline when you take them from our mySewnet embroidery software and into the Memento software, and it works really slick. Okay, now a couple more things I do want to share with you. If I go back to File and Export Applique Pieces, I can also use cutwork needles. So we have cutwork needles for embroidery machines. Most brands have cutwork needles for their embroidery machines, and you can export your applique piece shape as an embroidery design that cuts in the hoop with cutwork needles. So if you don't have a cutter, maybe it's not in your budget right now, or the technology is just more than you want to tackle, you can also use cutwork needles, or you can print templates. And if you print templates, it makes a paper printout from your printer, and you just cut that out and you slap it on your fabric and you cut it. And you could also use those to design your own English paper piecing, because it would be the actual size of the applique piece. So just kind of some fun things that you can do. Okay. So then the question was, when you cut on the memento, would you stitch those by machine onto your fabric, or can you still stitch them in embroidery? Well, you always have the choice of both ways, but you have an embroidery design. You made an embroidery design. Here's your whale. So I am going to send the blue piece and the green polka dotted piece over to Memento and cut those out of my fabrics. And then when I embroider this design, it's going to stop and tell me to put down my fabric, and it's going to tack it for me, and then it's going to finish it off with satin stitches. So within the embroidery system, and then taking that file over to Memento, that's really, they complement each other, right? They make it so that you don't have to sit with scissors after it attaches the fabric initially and cut around the outside of that shape. You can cut it on your Memento and then slap it down and embroider it into the design. Okay, I do have, Amy, if I missed a question, let me know. I do have some samples, so some ideas for you that you can kind of play with things. So I'm going to have Amy switch over so I can hold these up. And this is a Tooth Fairy pillow I did with the Prairie font. I absolutely love that font. And I did it with individual lettering so I could set that spacing exactly the way I wanted it to be. This one is the inspiration for the ABC 1, 2, 3 that I showed you, and I don't know how well it'll show up, but these are some designs that are in the sample file, the little blocks, and then the lettering is one of the applique fonts, and that one again is done as individual lettering so that I could move them around and adjust the size and adjust the spacing exactly the way I wanted it to be. This one is something I did as a little trunk show piece when we added the balloon font. But here you can see how some of those different envelope envelope shapes or letter shapes look when you stitch them out. So that's kind of fun. And then I need to scroll down here so I can see if Amy left me any love notes. Here is another one that, and I didn't get to the frames today, guys. Sorry, an hour is not very long. But this one is another one where I made an applique shape in the center. I'm not very good at getting in front of the camera. And then I used the circle over, circle under to add 2 sets of letters on a round base instead of a linear or wavy base to frame. And then I did a little frame around the outside. So maybe in another Facebook Live, we can cover some things with frames as well. Here's another example. This is a luggage label that I made. And I added my name and my branding. Here is a little quilt label. And see how tiny those letters are? That is a line block font. And I have increased the spacing on that to about 30% between the letters and the spacing between the lines to about 1.5. And you can see how that's very clear and very readable. That's done with regular 40 weight thread. So nothing there you don't have in your toolbox. And it doesn't matter if it's rayon or polyester, all of them will stitch about the same on that type of a font if you have it adjusted right. Now, these are some motif stitches that were added a while back, but are fairly new. And these are called bean and stem stitches. And those actually emulate the look of hand embroidery. So I think those are pretty cool, and I want to point them out to you. If you remember where I showed you that you could do the outer edge of some of those appliques as motif 1, motif 2, well, if you choose one of the motif options, you can go in and set them so that you're using these stitches and make it look like you hand worked around the edge of the applique. Here's just a little bag I made that's got a letter, a large letter on it, and I did a couple of borders around the outside. Just want to inspire you to get excited and embroider something. This one has a history. My mother, before she passed away, was in a nursing home, and she would get very, very lonely. So I made her pillowcases that had sentiments on them. And this one is a batik, and it says, "All you need is love." And somebody out there is surely going to catch the mistake I made, because there is a mistake. But you know what? My mom didn't care, and she left the pillowcase anyway. But it's kind of fun, the things you can do. These are die-cut letters, so they were cut on an electronic cutter and then appliqued down with a satin stitch applique design that I made right in our embroidery software. And then I have one more that I'm going to share with you. And this one says, "Why do frogs love to sew? Because they know how to rip it, rip it." And that's supposed to be a funny joke. So if you're laughing, I did my job for the day. We're just a couple of minutes over. So thank you, Amy. If anybody has any other questions, let me know. And hopefully we'll be doing some more Facebook Live on basics of the software so that we can cover some of these other things like more super designs, how to do frames, and then even move into some simple digitizing and things. So I enjoyed having you all today. Thanks for coming. And please join us for the next Facebook Live. Do you know what that is, Amy? What one is coming up next? Guess it doesn't really matter. All right, guys. If we don't have any other questions, thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope you had fun and learned a little something new.